So in bringing this new production of Mice and Men to the stage, one of the things that we really wanted to do was to find a way to tell the story that helps the audience understand how intimate a story it is, but against a larger cinematic backdrop. We didn't want to overload it with scenery. Instead, we wanted to give just enough to locate the opera in time and place. A lot of times in this opera, there are only two people on stage talking, or maybe just a few, but we needed to give a sense of the life in and around that, the beauty of the California countryside. So we knew that Luke Canterella wanted to design projections to go with it, and that's something that he and I have done almost in every show that we've done.
We've created kind of a sort of more abstract space that evokes a barn. This large floating box structure that can kind of move up and down, that is an evocation of the world, that we then use video imagery on top of, layered on top of, to create this sense of the Salinas Valley. Steinbeck's subtitle or alternate title from the novel was A Thing That Happened. He always refers to all the locations using like the indefinite article, a clearing, a bunkhouse, a barn. It's not the barn. It's like this could be any one of them.
The story is set in the 1930s in California during the Depression, and it tracks the life of some migrant farm workers. During that time, the great American documentarian Dorothea Lange went out and photographed people for the Farm Services Administration. So we have hundreds and thousands of photographs by Dorothea Lange and other photographers who worked for the FSA. She was a portrait photographer before she was a documentary photographer. So she was used to framing her shots quite close. What that means in the documentary world and her perspective is that she finds a way of photographing people that tells you something about them. And every one of her photographs has a perspective. So she's not just recording a scene, and she's allowing the human in the photograph to tell something of their story. So it immediately draws you in. They are all characters, and they all have a story to be told. And so we could make a production that is rooted in historical reality, but still has this great kind of theatrical basis.
Mostly it's supporting the spaces that we're creating with the scenery, sort of supplementing the scenic spaces, but sometimes we use the imagery to reinforce kind of the emotional inner life of the characters. There's a couple sequences in the show that we try to kind of take you more into the cinematic experience, more the sense of like the point of view of like Lennie and George, like running through the woods, like trying to escape. In these transitions that Carlisle Floyd wrote, that would have initially been done with like a curtain coming in and the scenery being changed upstage to the curtain. Now the video imagery is like a video curtain that takes us to like another space and creates this kind of narrative, interstitial narrative, to move us from one location to the other.
The narrative of Mice and Men has always been George is Lennie's caretaker. He does all of this stuff, and Lennie is this terrible burden that George has to bear. And if it weren't for Lennie, George's life would be better. And much of this is because of Lennie's developmental delay that makes him a very challenging human to deal with at times. But I really wanted to explore what Lennie gives to George. So the question in this production isn't just what does George do for Lennie, but what does Lennie do for George? You know, in 2026, I think we're much better at talking about the differently abled, about talking about people who are neurodivergent and on the spectrum, and understanding the beauty of their perspective and the value that they bring to our lives. So this production is actually technically from Lennie's point of view. And the way we do that in this production is through the projections. Every single projection that you see projected above the stage or on the floor somehow relates to what Lennie is seeing or feeling emotionally.
But here the floor comes out to you, and so we have taken content that we created for the back walls and we've moved it onto the floor so that it feels like the environment can be more immersive, more encompassing to like everybody within the house, so that they all feel like they're incorporated into the storytelling. In this production, all of the bunks we're using are surplus World War II Army bunks. And so they all have rust and age, and you kind of feel like you want to see a space and feel like, oh, it's been lived in for like 30 years, like that every item up there has its own kind of history that it's bringing to the story.
I love directing here at DMMO because of the intimacy of the theater. The man who is singing George in this production, John Moore, is also, he's a Simpson grad, he's a favorite here at DMMO, and when we were doing it together at Lyric Opera of Kansas City, all John kept saying to me was, I can't wait to get it to DMMO. And that was my feeling too, because we just knew, given the intimacy of the storytelling, this was the right place to put it. Today we just had actually our set walkthrough, so it's the first time we got to put the set up, and I had the singers come and walk around, and John and I looked at each other, and he smiled, and he said, this feels right. And of course, that's true. If you're going to tell the story of George and Lennie, you want the audience to be right in it with you. You want the audience to be 4 feet away as Lennie is singing about the American dream.
And here, George,